Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. Today's guest is Christine Quinn. We'll chat with Chris in just a second, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So, Chris Quinn is the president and CEO of Win, the largest provider of shelter and supportive housing for families experiencing homelessness in New York City and the nation. Win has also been at the forefront of the city's response to the ongoing migrant and homelessness crisis. She was also the first female and openly gay speaker of the New York City Council. She ran for New York City mayor in 2013 and is a political contributor on CNN and MSNBC. Chris, welcome into the back room.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So tell us about WIN and its mission.
So WIN, formerly Women in Need, is the largest provider of shelter and permanent housing to homeless families with children in the city. We house about 7,000 to 7,500 people a night, half of whom are children. We have 16 shelters, 5 permanent housing buildings, and on top of that, 200 permanent apartments that we rent. And one of the things that's distinct about WIN is we don't think of shelter as just, as my late father would have said, 3 hots and a cot. It's a place where people go when they're in need of support, when they're in need of services that can help them find a permanent apartment, but also address the conditions that led to homelessness, whether that's domestic violence, whether that's not having a job that, pays enough to pay the rent, on and on. So we have a model. We see the contracts we get with the city as our floor. Our ceiling is the needs of the client. The middle is our holistic wraparound model, the way to win. And we found last year that, 2 years ago, that 93% of the families we had moved out of housing were still living independently and hadn't returned to shelter.
That's great.
Something we're very proud of. And we think that middle, so to speak, is what makes the difference. And if the city would invest more in some of that programming, like job training and job placement, we call it income building, we think we could really make a huge dent in family homelessness.
Mm-hmm. And a new Advocates for Children study found that 1 in 8 New York City students experienced homelessness last year. That's a stunning statistic. How is this a reality in a city like New York? And what is WIN doing to help address this crisis?
Advocates for Children is a great group. People should support them. And it's terrible. And the worst part of it, it's worse than it was last year and the year before. I mean, for a number of years, it was kind of holding at 1 in 10. Not that that's good, don't get me wrong. But 1 in 8 is horrible. And do you know that New York State has the highest child poverty rate of any state in the country? How is this, possible?
How is it possible?
I don't understand it. And just so viewers, if they get a little confused by numbers, the Advocates for Children report rightly includes children in shelter and those who live doubled and tripled up. When we talk about the shelters, it's obviously just people in shelter. So it's happened because people try to ignore this problem. Family homelessness has not always gotten a lot of press attention. The type of homelessness that gets covered is singles, and they need a lot of help too. But what ends up happening, in my opinion, is publications like The Post look for a picture of the scariest looking homeless man, usually of color, they can find to, in a very racist way, scare New York and separate, as opposed to bring us together. But if people knew that the face of homelessness was a 5-year-old child with a working mom, I think they would view the entire crisis differently. So what we're doing at WIN is working with these families, mostly single mothers, working with them to address whatever brought them to homelessness, which is not their fault. Often that is helping them get a job that pays a living wage. So we have a very specific income building program, which trains to the mom's interest, to her skills, and to what sectors have opportunity. We also work with moms who come in, like we have a lot of moms who come in who are home health aides, really important job, but doesn't really pay a lot. So we help them go through training to move up in the healthcare industry to jobs that pay more and actually are more stable. That makes a huge difference. But another thing we do is work with the children, because the biggest indicator of who will be a homeless adult is who was a homeless child. A homeless child is much more likely to be a homeless adult. Now, being homeless, whether it's eviction, domestic violence, sexual violence, whatever the cause is traumatic. And I think we run top-notch shelters, but being in our shelters is traumatic. It's not your home. You didn't get to bring all your stuff. If you had a dog or a cat, they can't come. You more than likely, switch schools. You left your friends. Maybe mom doesn't want you to tell anybody that you're in a shelter. You understand that. So we have a lot of programs that are based on a trauma-informed model for children that really try to create a space where the children can work through trauma in a safe way so that when they leave shelter, they reduce some of the impact that being in shelter has had on them. The other thing we're doing to try to help is build housing that is affordable. One model is supportive housing, which is permanent housing with services on site. And probably 30 to 40% of homeless families need that type of housing to be able to live stably, but then also building affordable housing that's affordable at a level a formerly homeless person can afford. Because we need more housing for the middle class, don't get me wrong, but if you build tons of that, it's not going to help the wing line.
Mm-hmm. So I want to push back a little bit on the how is this possible thing. So New York City is one of the most liberal places in the world. Manhattan has become a playground of the rich. We've seen over the years parts of Queens and Brooklyn have become gentrified. Even parts of the Bronx are starting to get gentrified. We can expect this from somewhere. Pick your city.
Right.
But who is to blame in a city like New York? Is it the city council? Is it the mayor? Is it the assembly people? Is it the governor? Is it all the above? How is this possible in this city?
I think it's all of the above. And part of it is people don't think of homeless families as voters. Clearly homeless children are not. Mm-hmm. On a more generous level, I might say that it's too hard a reality for people to face, right? That we've let this happen. Also, it's a crime to have your child on the street. So you don't see homeless families, right? And you pretend probably they don't exist. But I think it's all of the above. And really, I think for too long, mayors, and I blame all of them, have tried to manage this problem, manage it off the cover of the New York Post, not manage it to solution. Mm-hmm. And if people would try to solve it, even if they make some mistakes along the way, right? And people need to be honest, elected officials need to be honest with the voters. It's going to take a good decade before we really see a solution to this problem. If you have that conversation, if you talk to voters about what we really need, I think you'll see they'll be supported. We did a poll a number of years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and it showed the vast majority of New Yorkers, even Staten Island, who people would think otherwise, thought more should be done to help the homeless. Mm-hmm. And I think you really have to put it at the feet of, and I say this cautiously, having been one, but you have to put it at the feet of the elected officials because they set the tone.
Mm-hmm. You recently testified at the New York City Council hearing on the 30 and 60-day shelter limits policy, which was created and implemented by the Adams administration last year. You urged the city to end this policy, which you and Wynn and many other advocates have said is cruel and displaces migrant families and creates instability. What's the latest on this and where is it headed?
So that was a very important hearing. And, this, by the admission of the city and the state, these evictions are designed to try to, force people to move along. Except if you've literally walked to the United States from Venezuela and then been shoved on a bus, you don't even know where you're going, by Governor Abbott, where are you going to go? If these folks had family somewhere, trust me, we've offered bus tickets. We've offered train tickets. If they could go, they did go. Mm-hmm. We are continuing to push. We have a piece of legislation in the state legislature. It has to be done by the state, introduced by Assemblymember Catalina Cruz and State Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel. We're having a roundtable on that on January 15th with the Assembly and the state. And we're going to push to try to get that bill passed in Albany and signed by the governor. Now, people might say, aren't things trailing off migrant-wise? And they are. But we should get this on the books because we don't know when it's going to, have a larger peak of people coming in. And we want to be in the right place. In the same way, it's really important that we remain a sanctuary city. Mm-hmm. Be great if we became a sanctuary state. But we know there's lots of rumors about maybe Mayor Adams making a change to that. And that would be devastating, devastating on a whole bunch of levels.
We saw in the election last month that Trump made pretty startling inroads into the traditional Democratic coalition here in New York City. How much do you attribute the quote unquote migrant crisis to how he was able to eat into Democrats' voter base here?
Well, look, they use the migrant, right? They use them as the boogeyman, no question, as well as, in my opinion, the transgender community. Those were the two things that America was supposed to become afraid of. So you can't say it didn't have an impact. Mm-hmm. But I also think what had an impact was that we Democrats sat back and took it. Right. A lot of the, information they had out there, these images of migrants looting and pillaging and murdering, it's not accurate. It's not accurate. The vast majority of crime in this country is committed by citizens. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't, I don't seek to take, God knows, and personally, anything away from victims, regardless of who the perpetrator is. But we don't push back. We see an ad like that and we get upset, right? And we respond with something else. We should have hit them harder. We should have hit them directly. And there's a way we could have framed it that their position is, in fact, un-American and does not track with what we know, which is that every other time there has been a large influx of immigrants to America, the United States has benefited. We, it's like the John Kerry Swift vote thing. We didn't learn anything. We just continue to let ourselves get Swift vote.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point because what you're saying about New York, and the irony is we have the Statue of Liberty within eyesight, right? Right. Of three boroughs. And a lot of people here just, they'll make pilgrimages and, go on school trips and see, but the words inscribed at the bottom, give us you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor, you're yearning to be free, yada, yada, yada. They don't really subscribe to that at all.
And they don't start. And, we need to remind people, elected officials need to remind people that being an American, being a New Yorker was never designed to be easy. It was designed to be on a constant quest for a more perfect union, which is work, right? So yes, bringing in people who aren't undocumented, people who may need to learn a second language, which, by the way, I've never been able to learn a second language, and things like that. It is work for us as a citizenry. But what we reap is the benefits of being an American and, most significantly, being a New Yorker.
Yeah. And when you say, to be an American, to be a New Yorker, I think we need to remind people that in both of those cases, it usually means either to be an immigrant yourself or to be the children or grandchildren of immigrants. So a lot of people call themselves, well, I'm an American. Well, what does that mean? We're all descendants of immigrants.
We're all descendants of immigrants.
Except Native Americans.
Here. Well, right. Look, my four grandparents came from Ireland as Irish Catholics, fleeing a system where they had no opportunity and at times of persecution. One of my grandfathers ended up being a battalion chief in the New York City Fire Department. He got his citizenship by enlisting in World War I. But we hear still about mothers who are getting attempts to be deported. I worked with them when I was a council, whose sons were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. So this system has clearly kind of lost its way. I have to say, we all try to be optimistic, but it's worrisome that things won't get better for a while. Mm-hmm. And certainly the behavior on the spending bill in the last couple of days doesn't foreshadow effective leadership, right. But time will tell.
So with regard to the homelessness crisis in New York and elsewhere, but let's stick with New York because that's where we both are and that's where you're working. What can the federal government do to help ease the burden on New York City? But do you have any hope, given the very anti-immigrant Trump administration stance?
So the federal government could extend more what's called temporary protective status, right? It's kind of like asylum, but it basically says the situation in your country is so bad right now, we're going to grant you this status. The Biden administration could certainly extend more TPS status to more countries.
Is that something that Trump can do on January 20th, undo in an executive order?
I would think so. I don't know that 100%, but I think so. But, Biden should have done more countries than he did. He gave TPS, I think, to Venezuela and one other country I'm not recalling. He could have done more. Trump was not going to, but he could. But I don't think Congress can do that, but I could be wrong. I think it's a presidential thing. If we got more money from the federal government, who has Democratic administrations to Republican administrations disinvested in housing funding, that would help everything as it relates to homelessness. If we had more money for supportive housing, if we had more, money for HUD. But as I said, they want to cut cancer research for children. So I think it's a challenge. Now, what does that mean? It means we need to keep pressing the federal government, of course. Means we need to win more House seats in 2 years so Hakeem Jeffries is the speaker and they don't have all three branches of government. But it also means that the city and the state have to step up. And that's unfortunate. They have to fill the gap, but that is life. And there are things the city and the state can do. I'd love to come back and talk about it in January. We're putting together a listing of those, kind of not Project 2025, but Project Hope, for what we know that if the city and state took actions, could make a difference in the lives of homeless folks, homeless families, and migrants.
So you mentioned Mayor Adams before with a potential decision that could be devastating. How do you rate his performance overall?
Well, I mean, it's been an unbelievably devastating week for the mayor. I mean, this is, a week, if you're going to rate him, it's just terrible. It's just terrible. I mean, to be kind, one could say incomplete because he's not done, but that really is not accurate. I mean, we have a week where you're denied campaign finance funding, not because you had technical errors, right? Those can be fixed. That happens. But because they have concerns about I don't know what the word they use, but basically the efficacy of how you're raising money. And then your closest 30-year advisor, who you describe as your sister, is indicted. It's a bad week. Now, the issue is nobody can separate all of that, which maybe you say is politics, but it's not, from governing. It has an impact. Now, the administration was not super efficient before all of these scandals broke. So it's very hard to get things done or done quickly through the administration. There are commissioners out there for whom I have a great deal of respect, who are kind of keeping their head down and getting the work done. But some of the big decisions that have, and I want to say the Department of Homeless Services Commissioner, I give her a lot of credit. She's really trying to do the right thing. She's trying to make sure that the migrants who are in the homeless system are not easy prey for ICE when the president gets elected. But it's been a very disappointing mayoralty.
And we're living in an age now where we've learned, unfortunately, that there are certain people who are above the law. Do you ever think he will face justice for the allegations and charges against him?
Well, all of these discussions of a Trump pardon certainly call that into question. Right. That said, the judge denying the dismissal of the bribery charges, I believe it was, is a sign that justice is going to move forward.
So we have an election next year for mayor. You ran in 2013.
Yes.
Any plans to run again?
I've said I'm not going to run against Mayor Adams, and at the moment I stand by that. So not at the moment, but this has been a crazy time.
Well, let's say it gets a little crazier and his own personal situation gets even crazier than that. And that opens up.
I right now am really focused on running Win. It's the end of the year, so I'm doing a lot of fundraising. So if anyone wants to go to our website and give us money, it would help me reach my goal. We're working on these stuff in response to Project 2025. So, I want to stay focused on what I'm charged to do, because I feel like those 7,500 folks we have every night are my relatives. So that's really my focus. And, I love being an elected official. It was such an honor. And it was so important. You could get so much done. And the people in government are special. No offense to anybody else, but it really is a camaraderie. Mm-hmm. I've not seen it else, though I love Quinn. So who knows?
Mm-hmm. So let's just shift to national for a second, which I'm going to bring back to New York City. Trump's nominated Bobby Kennedy Jr. to be the head of the Department of Health and Human Services. Given his various controversial and dangerous positions on healthcare, vaccines, and abortion, for example, as well as Trump's on those and immigration as well, how concerned are you in general, but also how it will impact the citizens, residents, and even the homeless in New York City?
I am extremely concerned. I mean, in some ways, I think Robert Kennedy is the most dangerous appointment he has put forward. Because if he makes steps around vaccines, people are already... Back up
well, he pissed off Mitch McConnell, which ain't easy to do.
I know. And Mitch is not running again. Mm-hmm. So we may see a whole,
new
unbridled Mitch McConnell.
Son of a Mitch.
When there was the mandate that anybody who worked for the city or contracted with the city had to get the COVID vaccine. We went about making sure the 900 plus Wynn employees got vaccinated. There were people who had a lot of fear. We had to do a lot of education. We had to really work with people. So people fear vaccines, particularly communities of color who have been victimized by the medical profession, fear vaccines. Mm-hmm. So for them, this man to be putting out junk science, debunked theories about vaccines being dangerous, associating with people who want to get rid of the polio vaccine, they really do damage because people are already afraid. So now you have a homeless population, which gets less health care, is more at risk of getting very sick, and you take away vaccines, it's a recipe for, real disaster and real high levels of children getting sick in a way that could be, deadly. And on top of that, we've heard nothing out of Bobby Kennedy of how to make people actually live longer or be more healthy. The other thing I'm afraid of is if he rolls back vaccinations, what precedent does that set for the rest of the world? Mm-hmm. For governments who don't want to do any right things by their citizens, they're going to roll back vaccines. It's just, it feels like an addition of the onion or something. Because how do you have people who are supposed to be...
The only difference is the onion is funny.
Exactly, right, true. It leaves me terrified, actually, the impact he could have. And also, we have a terrible obesity crisis in this country and a terrible diabetes crisis in this country. And so yesterday, Whoopi Goldberg was so articulate. She's very honest. She's taken the injectable weight loss drugs and she was almost 300 pounds, she said. Now, he's shaming those people. I don't understand that. He's a man who's got arrested for having heroin on an airplane and had a heroin addiction. And he's going to shame people who have challenges with losing weight and overeating. I mean,
but look at who he's going to work for. Did you see what Trump posted like a week ago when there were drones dropping off bags of McDonald's to Chris Christie, who was sitting in a chair, like scarfing down McDonald's. Like, this is what, like, you just won the presidency, right? Instead of being happy and like getting to work, rolling up to sleep, this is what Trump does. Trump, without looking in the mirror, Trump body shames people.
I mean, it is true. We always say people rise or fall to the levels we set for them. And, Trump has set a level of no vaccine Robert Kennedy and sexual harassing sex, and God knows what Matt gets. We'll find out when the report comes out. But all of that said, I think in 2 years, given all that's going to happen, we can get the House back. If we do it better and we do it more aggressively and we listen to people. Whether we thought based on Wall Street numbers or whatever, the economy was good, nobody felt it was good. Eggs are really expensive. We need to listen to people and address what they need. And if you address the price of eggs, that helps win clients and it helps a factory worker and a farmer, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. So another subject which I know is important to you, given Trump's and the GOP's incendiary rhetoric and draconian positions and policies that are impacting the LGBTQ plus community, what are your worst fears heading into 25?
Well, my worst fears are that this targeting, this attacking, that it's going to have real effects on LGBTQ teenagers and children. And we know already LGBTQ teenagers and children have a very high suicide rate, one of the highest of any group in the country. And I worry that that's going to go up, that children are going to feel like the president of the United States, the most important person in the world, hates them and has set them out there, to be tarred and feathered. And people like Donald Trump, maybe he does know and doesn't care, or maybe he doesn't know, but his words have impact on people, have impact on children. So I worry about a spike in LGBTQ suicide rates.
And those rates have been rising, before, up until this imminent Trump administration. So it's already a problem. People
think, you got marriage equality, everything's easy now. How hard could it be to come out? That's not the truth, right? Yes, we have marriage equality, but we still don't have real civil rights laws. There are still places where you can get married on Saturday and fired on Monday. Whatever you think about the whole transgender sports issue, transgender people are attacked. They're constantly. It's not a nuanced discussion. It's, a battering ram discussion. It's hard. And we still, even in the New York tri-state area, see children kicked out of their homes when they come out who now live on the streets of New York City.
The fact that they were able to succeed with rhetoric that like kids go to school on a Monday, one gender, and come home the next day. And
I know.
It's like, I guess we're just a dumbed down society that, some of us will believe anything at this point, which is kind of scary.
I was on a panel at the Paley Center in Manhattan, right? So we all think this conversation wouldn't happen. And a couple came up to, a man and woman came up to me after it and said, because I had urged people to vote yes on Prop 1 in New York, and which the opponents who lost used transgender to try to scare people. One said, I guess since you're for Prop 1, you're for 8-year-olds cutting off their breasts. It's like, what? Like, where does that come from? You look like a normal woman. Person in
look like keywords.
Right? Like, totally shocked me. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. And I wish so much we could have conversations that were at least based in fact and reality. If you want to disagree after that, okay, that's fine. I also wish we could learn to disagree more agreeably, which doesn't mean to back down. But look, Ted Kennedy, most progressive, one most progressive senators ever used to work with Republicans to get things done. Those days are so far gone. It'll be a while before.
Yeah. My last question is not about politics or advocacy, even though people mostly know you for politics and advocacy. It's a window into the soul question. We know you for those things. We don't know who you listen to music-wise. So give me your top 5 musical artists.
Oh, top 5. Bruce Springsteen.
All right.
James Taylor, Carly Simon. That's 3. Well, if I don't say Taylor Swift, my wife will kill me because she's like a fully Swiftie. Fully, as has my great niece Harper, and there's like nothing cuter than the two of them dancing. And we got Harper a big Taylor Swift basket for Christmas. And I would end with Joni Mitchell.
Awesome. That's a great list. You punched it out very quickly. I'm a little disappointed you left out the 4 guys from Liverpool, but that's my thing. I have to accept that.
I like the Beatles, but I'm not like a crazy Beatles fan. But you know who I forgot? Billy Joel. I'm a Long Island girl.
We agree on that.
And we got to see the last play at Shea, and when Paul McCartney came and played with it, and there was like a fog or whatever, he was late. And so you're right by LaGuardia, and planes are flying overhead, and you're thinking, is Paul in that one? Is Paul in that one? But he did make it.
There's footage of Paul actually explaining that situation, how he got off the plane, and they had to rush him in a motorcade or whatever. Chris, this was great. I love having you on, and keep doing what you're doing. It's really important work, and do come back soon.
It's absolutely. Happy holidays.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg, and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.